विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्तिः 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 सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपात् स भूमिं विश्वतो वृत्वा अत्यतिष्ठद्दशाङ्गुलम् पुरुष एवेदगं सर्वम् यद्भूतं यच्च भूयम् उतामृतत्वस्येषानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो ज्यायागिश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतम् दिवि त्रिपादूर्ध्व उदैः पुरुषः पादोऽस्येहा भवात् पुनः ततो विश्वम् व्यक्रामत् शासनानशने अभि तस्माद् जायत विराजो अधिपूरुषः स जातो अत्यरिच्यत पश्चाद्भूमिमथो पुरः यत्पुरुषेण हविषा देवा यज्ञमतन्वत वसन्तो अस्यासीदाज्यम् ग्रीष्म इद्मः शरद्धविः सप्तास्यासन् परिधजः त्रिः सप्त समिधः कृताः देवागद्यज्ञन्तन्वानाः अबध्नन् पुरुषम् पशुम् तञ्यज्ञम् बर्हिषि प्रोक्षन् पुरुषम् जातमग्रतः तेन देवा अयजन्त साध्या ऋषयश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः सम्भृतम् वृषदाज्यम् पशोगस्तागश्चक्रे वायम्यान् आरण्यान् ग्राम्याश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः ऋचः सामानि जज्ञिरे छन्दागुंसि जज्ञिरे तस्मात् यजुस्तस्मादजायत तस्मादश्वा अजायन्त ये केचोभजादतः गावोह जज्ञिरे तस्माज्जाता अजावयः यत्पुरुषम् व्यदधुः कतिधा व्यकल्पयन् मुखम् किमस्य कौ बाहू का भूरूपादावुच्येते ब्राह्मणोऽस्य मुखमासीत् बाहूराजन्यः कृतः ऊरो तदस्य यद्वैश्यः पद्भ्यागम् शूद्रो अजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षोः सूर्यो अजायत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणात् वायुरजायत नाभ्या आसीदन्तरिक्षम् शीर्ष्णोद्यौः समवर्तत पद्भ्याम् भूभिर्दिशः श्रोत्रात् तथा लोकागम् अकल्पयन् वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसस्तु पारे सर्वाणि रूपाणि विचित्य धीरः नामानि कृत्वाभिवदन् यदास्ते धाता पुरस्ताद्यमुदा जहार चक्रः प्रविद्वान् प्रदिशश्च तस्रः तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था अयनाय विद्यते यज्ञेन यज्ञमयजन्त देवाः तानि धर्माणि प्रथमान्यासन् ते हनाकम् महिमानः सचन्ते यत्र पूर्वे साध्याः सन्ति देवाः सम्भूतः पृथिव्यैरसाच्च विश्वकर्मणः समवर्तताधि तस्य त्वष्टा विदधद्रूपमेति तत्पुरुषस्य विश्वमाजानमग्रे वेदाहमेतं पुरुषं महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णं तमसः परस्तात् तमेवं विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था विद्यते जनाय प्रजापतिश्चरति गर्भे अन्तः अजायमानो बहुधा विजायते तस्य धीराः परिजानन्ति योनिम् मरीचीनां पदमिच्छन्ति वेधसः यो देवेभ्य आतपति यो देवानां पुरोहितः पूर्वो यो देवेभ्यो जातः नमो रुचाय ब्राह्मणे रुचं ब्राह्मन् जनयन्तः देवा अग्रे तदब्रुवन् यस्त्वैवं ब्राह्मणो विद्यात् तस्य देवा असन्वशे ह्रीश्च ते लक्ष्मीश्च पत्न्यौ अहोरात्रे पार्श्वे नक्षत्राणि रूपम् अश्विनौ व्यात्तम् इष्टं मनिषाण अमुं मनिषाण सर्वं मनिषाण ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः
ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So today is the last class, and it's possible that it might run over by a few minutes. So we'll see, hopefully not. So in the Vedanta Shastra, there is a very popular example, a story, which is used quite often by different acharyas. I don't know how it originated, but it's a very like this, the rope and snake example and the 10th man example. This one also has a lot of relevance to us in our lives. So this is a story that you must have heard before. So the story goes that one time there was a herd of lions that was trying to capture some sheep as food. And so they attacked the sheep herds, the sheep, not the sheep herds, but the sheep. And then they got some sheep and so on and so forth, and then they ran away. So in that lion's herd, there was a little cub who was too weak to really run after his parents. So the parents were hoping that he would come, but he didn't. So he stayed back, and actually was then reared by the sheep in the methods that they were very accustomed to, which is they eat grass, and they were very gentle with each other and never really attacked each other. And so he also adopted the same qualities as the sheep. He also started being a vegetarian and was not really very pugnacious. He was very calm like the sheep and so on. So one day, a few years later, the lions came back to that place and they again attacked the sheep. And while they were in the process of doing so, they found that there was this lion who used to be a very small cub, is now grown up into a hefty sized lion. And he was also acting like the sheep. So he was recoiling from them, not attacking them back, was not really pugnacious, he was very gentle, afraid of the lions, and so on. So the story goes that one of the lions got hold of this guy and he says, "What the heck are you doing? You're one of us. Don't you know that you are a lion? And what do you eat?" So the little lion said, grass and so on. He says, "What are you talking about? You have to eat meat." And in fact, he killed one of the sheep and he said, "Eat it." And he says, no, I can't eat it. He says, "Just eat it." And he forced him to eat that. And then he says, "Go after the sheep and attack them." So he was reluctant to do it, but he did, and so on. Then he took him to a pond and says, "Look at yourself. Do you look like a sheep?" He says, "Well, I never really looked at my reflection before, so you're right. I'm not a sheep, I'm a lion." So he says, "Okay, now come with us. You're one of us. You don't have to really behave like a sheep." This is the story. This is a story because it is really very relevant to us, very relevant to human beings, where it is said that, listen, you human beings, you behave like a completely different species, which you are not. You feel very limited. You don't look at things in the right way. You create problems for yourself and to others also. This is not how you should be behaving. You are like the Devatas. You're like Brahman. You're like Ishvara, in the family of the Ishvara. You're not in the family of human beings. Why are you doing it this way? So the human being says, "What do you mean? This is what I grew up to be. This is what I was reared. My parents and my friends, they all are the same way." So they say, "Well, they don't know. Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror?" He says, "Yes." He says, "Not the way you should be looking at the mirror." And here, let me tell you about all the similarities between you and the Devatas. That is what you should be really thinking about. So they go through a lot of Vedanta goes through a lot of arguments to say that if you look at the similarities, they're all similar. Yes, there are some differences, but they're minor differences. In a major way, you are pretty much the same as the Devatas. Sakshitvam, Anaditvam, Abhayam, and all kinds of things and so on. So in this last verse that we are taking, Chandrama Manaso Jataha Chaksho Suryo Jataha Ayajayata Mukhadindrascha Agnischa Pranat Vayurajayata. This verse is the Shruti telling us, what the heck are you doing? Don't you see the similarity between you and Ishvara? You belong to the jati of Ishvara, of the Devatas. You don't belong to this wretched jati of human beings who thinks himself and herself as being highly limited, who's a samsari. You don't belong to that. And by way of convincing, and there's a lot of arguments that you have to make, because this lion cub was not convinced at all. He's lived all his life like a sheep, and he's very used to doing it. For someone coming up saying you are very different, it doesn't square well with him, because he's not used to doing it. They have to put his neck, scruff it and say, eat this. You are a different species. And look at yourself in the mirror. Do you look like a sheep? All those kinds of things have to be done. So, here we should now look at this verse number 12, the last verse, in this light. So I thought I'd start with an example so that you can see that in this light. So there, at first it says that your mind and the mind of Ishvara, you should look at the similarity of it. Use your mind for Ananda Swarupa. It's capable of doing it. You occasionally do it. It's not as though you cannot do it. But because your coordinates that you're using your mind with are wrong, therefore you don't use the mind the right way. If you really use it the right way, you are going to be okay. We saw that beautiful example that Swami Maheshananji pointed out, where the fellow had gotten a wrong diagnosis, thinking that your days are numbered. And so the mind, once you start thinking about my days are numbered, you begin to look everything as dukkha, 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 limited, 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 and it begins to kill you. Facts haven't changed. It's the same facts. If you look at it another way, then your mind has a different way of looking at it. So there it says that try to see the similarity of Ishvara's mind, which is a mind that gives freedom. It's not bothered by any limitations. And your mind, which should be like that. So look at the similarity. Then, as we will see in later on, Swami Maheshananji says that there is a krama. There is a krama involved. There is a certain sequence involved. And the sequence is, if for some reason you are not able to see it, so this is what called jnanam. So the first similarity, which is Chandrama Manaso Jataha, because of the mind, is which is manovritti. And so this is the attempt for knowledge, that really my mind is keeping me as an upadhi limited. But the same mind, once it is educated, like the education of the akasha versus room space, total space versus room space, that is education. And so once it is educated, you can be free. This is jnana. Now, if for some reason you cannot do it, then the next step is this upasana between Surya and Chakshu. So, if jnanam is not possible, then you can take a step down and resort to strengthening your understanding by prayer of the upasana. And here the prayer is of a very superior kind, which exactly means you try to look at the similarity between Surya and Chakshu. How? Because the Surya is born from the wisdom of each Ishvara. So here we saw that if you look at the basic distinction between a Jada camera, an inert camera, no matter how sophisticated it is, it could be Hasselblad blood, or these days cameras are gone pretty much except for some very specialized use. But in those days, remember, we used to think about all these very sophisticated expensive cameras. Nikon, I think I owned a Nikon at one time. It's sitting there somewhere in my closet for the last 30 years, 20 years. And I used to carry this heavy camera wherever I would go. Anyway, no matter how sophisticated the camera is, it cannot substitute for an eye. You know why? Because we've gone through this. I'm not covering new ground. This is still revision. Because an eye has the backing of a Chaitana Vastu, which is the Atma, and backed by all the paraphernalias of bhava, of the mind, attitude. That's when you look at something through your eyes, an object or something, that's just just a start. But it is much more than just looking at the object like a camera. You get your entire personality involved in viewing that thing, and your response to it very much depends on what it is. And so we saw the example that if your mother is standing there, the camera takes the picture of your mother and simply just comes up and he says, okay, here it is. She's wearing a green sari and she's on the beach, and that's it, smiling. But when you see your mom wearing a green sari on the beach, it's a different feeling altogether. I'm so happy that we took this vacation together, and so on. You have different things about it. And so the Chakshu and Surya, so the Surya is born from the Chakshu of Ishvara. And so that means that it has bhavam, it has some bhavana, it has some reason to be what it is. Our eyes have a reason to be what it is. It's just not just a simple instrument. It is my expression. So if I were to, again going back to the example of the mother, so when you greet your mother through your eyes, that's your expression, because that brings a smile to your face, and how you respond to her, all is due to the seeing her. So similarly here also in the case of the sun, Ishvara makes sure that the sun has the same graciousness, the same bhavana for everyone. And it does. It is the servant of Ishvara. Bhishasmat vataf pavate bhisho udeti surya, Taittiriya Upanishad. And it is the very workman of Ishvara. Ishvara says, please help people to have this srishti. Most important expression of Ishvara is the sun. Most important. Because it is the very source of the two most important reasons for our life. which is one of three things. Really, two of the three things it has. The third one is the Vayu, through oxygen. But the light and the heat, without which the whole Shrishti will disappear, is offered and given to us by Surya. Not an ordinary thing. And so it has the backing of the Ishvara. It is not just some kind of a camera looking at us. It has the bhavam of Ishvara. Like an eye has the bhavam of the jiva. In fact, one can see, this is an important thing to see, that the person who is behind Surya, Aditya. Surya also is called Aditya, so many different names of the word Surya. The person behind the Surya is the same person behind the eyes of a human being. Same vastu. This is very important to see. It is very crucial for us to understand, to accept it at first and then to understand it. There is only one Chaitana Vastu in the whole creation, which is Brahman, which is same as Atma. Same Vastu. And it is the same person who is behind Surya, enabling it to have an enormous effect on the creation. And it is the same person who is behind the eye of a jiva, who is very limited. Same person. How can it be? It's very interesting to see. So we can very easily see it if you look at the same electricity flowing through a small weak lamp. Like, you have this candelabra, these kind of conical shaped things that are in your dining table, or just around the some kind of a passageway, because you don't want to have a very bright light there, so you deliberately put a small bulb there, and there's hardly any light coming up. You can't even read from it. This actually is true, because I have in my breakfast nook, so there is a nice lamp, and it has several of these. I think there must be about 8 or 12 of them, all about 40 watts, 40 watts, 40 watts, 35 or whatever it is. And I'm also getting old. My eyes are not as sharp. And in the winter time, of course, in the summertime the sun is up and so on. But in the winter time, if I start reading there with a cup of coffee and do some chanting or reading, I have a hard time because there's not enough light. So this is the same insufficient light through the same electricity flowing through a very powerful lamp. You see these lamps that are in the playground at colleges and high schools. When they play, I am really amazed. I watch baseball, and now I understand. Same thing with cricket. I mean, it was very difficult for me to understand how can they play cricket at night time, because they have such powerful lights. They know what they're doing. And I think the ball also is made into a slightly, white color or something. In our days, I guess it was all red. And during the day also, I don't know, I haven't watched cricket, even though I was so fond of it in India. But it's gone out of my system. Even now, when I get occasionally some people will say, even my son would say, "Dad, did you know that India beat Australia?" I said, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." And that was good. That's all I know. Anyway, the very powerful lights in these. So, the same electricity. So the difference is in the light emanated depends upon the bulb, not on the electricity. Similarly is the case here. Brahman is working through Surya. And I understand that Surya is one of the smallest stars in the universe. There are so many stars that are so much more powerful. Infinite number of stars. In fact, in the whole creation, you cannot have any creation without light. What a creation. My goodness. All sources of light sprinkled all over. Incredible. So that's the same Ishvara, and then is the same Ishvara that is through our eyes. Unaffected, unchanging. The nature of consciousness, the Atma, the Sakshi, same one. And I can't see very much, and I don't have the helpful attitude like the Surya does. So I'm like a candelabra. And this is like sports light, huge, powerful light, but it's the same person. And if I behave with the same bhavana that the Surya has, then my similarity becomes very apparent. Exactly like the tiger cub is told, you are not a sheep, you are a lion. Don't you see the similarity? And from now on, come with us and behave like us. Be strong and don't be afraid. If somebody runs into you, you attack him. Kings, the lions are the kings of the mountain, of the forest. You are one of those. Why are you cowering behind some fear? Eating grass doesn't behoove you. Similarly here also, we are told that your attitude, your bhavana towards others and yourself, not only others but yourself, be free, be fearless. Taittiriya Upanishad also is a very important thing. Abhayam pratishtham vindate. And so one of the consequences of understanding who I am as an Atma is that I become Abhayam. I fear nothing, fear no future, no present, don't worry about the past. I'm fearless. That state will come. Doesn't matter what happens. There's no fear about if I fall sick. Okay, fall sick. What if I die? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I hope that I will completely understand that I am deathless. But even if I don't, there's enough in my knowledge in me said, doesn't matter. I'll be reborn. I'll get it then. It doesn't matter. Swami Maheshananji gives on this mat. He says that. So one day Lord Yama, Dharmaputra, the Lord of Death, visits people and says, okay, it is time for you to come with me. And Brahmagyani is not afraid of Yama. Yama is pictured as being Bhayankaraha, very dangerous looking person. You just look at him and you just faint because death is imminent. You say, oh my gosh, my friends, my kids and my wife, everything gone. But if you are a Brahmagyani and you are just in meditation and there is a knock on the door by Yama, this is Yama, open the door. You will rush to open the door and say, hi, I've been waiting for you. You're waiting for me? What do you mean you're waiting for me? It doesn't matter. I know you were going to come one day, but it doesn't matter to me. He says, it doesn't matter to you? Why? How come? So you can tell Yama, I am already within you. It's not as though you have to take me with you. I'm already with you all the time. I am everywhere. I am not just this body. I am the Atma which is present in a spaceless, timeless manner. So I'm already with you. Let's go. You can take the body, take the body. Doesn't make any difference to me. That's the end result of the similarity between Ishvara and the Jiva. This is what the training of the tiger cub is. Don't you see? It's very clear. There's only one Chaitanya Vastu. You are and you are it. If you think you are not the Chaitanya Vastu, you are insulting Ishvara. There cannot be two Chaitanya Vastu. No, Ishvara, you are your own Chaitanya, I am my own consciousness. You are your consciousness. This is silly. You don't understand anything. Anyway, so that's what happens. Swami Maheshananji was talking about the fact that so seeing the similarity between Chakshu and Surya is the subject matter of Upasana. Because the Chandrama and Manaha, the identity between Chandra and Manaha are not yet understood. And so therefore you have to resort to the next best thing, which is Upasana. Jnanam is not clear, so Upasana has to be resorted to. Upasana means a prayerful attitude to develop a certain love, a bhavana, counter bhavana to the Suryas towards me and me towards the Surya. And so here Swami Maheshananji spends a lot of time. In fact, I was just bringing both the books here. I mean, this is his Purusha Suktam Prathama Khanda, which we did a long time ago. Prathama Khanda has, first one has 650 odd pages. And then today we will finish the Dvitiya Khanda. It goes up to 1252. 1252 pages of arguments, stories, and to convince us. This is a monumental work. And he's only covering only the key verses of Purusha Suktam, only 12 out of the 24. Monumental work. I don't see it anywhere. I don't see other acharyas talking about this at all. This is just absolutely mind-boggling. All Vedanta. So he gives this example here in the last, I think 50, maybe not 50, but maybe 30 pages of these examples in this last verse. So one of the examples he says is, this is the illustration of upasana, the development of bhavana between Chakshu and Surya. So he says in Bengal, there was a great bhakta of Kali, because the goddess Kali is very popular in Bengal. Durga is the same Durga, but they call it Kali. And she is bhayankara looking. So she is absolutely dark faced with a red tongue hanging out like this and ready to kill all the bad asuras. This is Kali. And she was very dark, almost black in color, skin color. So this bhakta, his name was Ram Prasad in Bengal. And he has written a lot of commentary on things and so on. So it was famous that whenever he would see dark clouds in the sky, he would say, this is Kali. Because of the similarity of color between the dark cloud and Kali's color, skin color. So he used to say, that reminds me of it. And he was just lost in meditation. And people used to make fun of him. He says, this guy is something wrong with him. He just, how can you do things like this? You look at cloud and say, Namaste Kali. What the heck are you doing? And he used to write, and I used to look upon everybody as really mad that they cannot see Ishvara. You cannot see Ishvara, can't you see it everywhere? There's something wrong with you. It's very clear. He used to say that. And what he could see, others cannot see, and what the others can see, he could not see. You know the very famous verse in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, verse number, I believe, 69. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. He says, what is day for people is the night for the Muni. And what is night for the people is the day for the Muni. And so here, Swami Maheshananji quotes maybe this is a very beautiful section, really. He quotes, forget the name of the, I forgot to write it down, but anyway, there is a Pandita, there is a Swami who had given this example. It's a very common example. Swami Dayanand used to, when he first came up with this Dakshinamurti Vigraha in the Sailor'sburg Ashram, I remember we were all so excited, and Swamiji was never tired of taking people who go for a tour of this brand new Vigraha and explaining to us. And again, Dakshinamurti is really Shiva. Shiva as a teacher, otherwise it's Shiva. So it is called Ashtamurti Shiva. Ashtamurti Shiva. Ashtamurti means 7 different limbs. And sometimes you can see how the Dakshinamurti is holding all these things in his head, in his forearms, all of this. This is called Ashtamurti Shiva. And the Ashtamurti is Surya, Chandrama, Prithvi, Jala, Tejaha, Vayu, Akasha, and Atma. Atma means, and the Swami Dayananji was very, very fond of doing this. He will say, do you see the 8 things? So we will all look at it, and then he will explain. He says, the Damaru is the sound, so it's the Akasha. And then he had Surya and Chandra on his head. Like that he would say, okay, this is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 6, number 7. And this is Ashtamurti, it's 8 of them. Do you know where the 8th one is? So we will all look around, and everybody will look around. And I can't find it. He would turn to us and say, you are the 8th one. In fact, you are the only one. Everything else is just a jada. You are the only Chetana Vastu. Chetana Vastu means same old thing. Ajaha, never born, always there. Shantaha, Shivam Sundaram. Sakshi, never changing, Avikari, you. And so this poet used to say, this is the Ashtamurti that you see in your life. You see the Surya, the light. In fact, even the light of the lamp is really the light of the Surya. It is the energy of the Surya. So either if the Surya is not there, then the Chandra gives the light. And if both of them are supplemented with all these 5 elements, 2 plus 7 plus 5, Akasha, Vayu, etc., etc. These are called Pancha Mahabhutas. And then you have a Bhautikani, combination of these. So you have a table which is 3 or 4 or 5 things, all of them actually combined together. Some Akasha, some Vayu, some Tejaha, some Apaha, some Prithvi. Manifestations of them. So this is what the whole Ashtamurti Shiva is. Where is it not? Then if you don't see Shiva in there, that means that you are not schooled properly. Nobody has introduced this to you. So who is mad? Are you mad or am I mad? That's what Ram Prasad used to say. That if I see darkness, then it reminds me of Kali. It was interesting. It's interesting, you know. Sometimes if some machinery is on in our house, like even a the oven or a microwave or something. So it has a background noise to it. And somehow when I hear that background noise, then some chanting comes to my mind. Om Namah Shivaya Om. And so when the whole thing just stops, then my chanting also stops. I really enjoy it. Some noise comes around, a constant kind of a noise, then my chant goes on top of that. I really enjoy it. It doesn't bother me. So if you're trained to do this, then you begin to see. In the Panchadashi, there's a very beautiful chapter, number 11, on Yogananda I don't know, I think that I have to really think about what to do next after this class is over. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But certainly the 11th chapter of, in fact all 5 chapters, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 of Panchadashi are great candidates for teaching. It's just that I don't want to take a complete. It's 134 verses in the 11th chapter. And I would like to take some small passages, which I will perhaps. So I'll figure it all out. Anyway, in this one, 11th chapter, there is a question and answer, sort of like a dialogue. It's not a question and answer, but a kind of like a dialogue between Purvapakshi and Siddhanti. Some people that have a doubt, and then they reply to it. So he was talking about Brahmananda as the very underlying Ananda for all of your Vishayananda. Vishayananda means when you have some joy from objects. So you have something that you really like, and if your spouse cooks that, you just love it. Or Haagen-Dazs ice cream or something. It's called Vishayananda. So there's a lot of dialogue going on between the connection between Brahmananda and Vishayananda and so on. In there, one of the questions is, one of the doubts is, wait a second, I can see that there is a great deal of similarity between Brahmananda, which you say is your own Ananda, and Vishayananda. I can see that. How they interact, I'm not quite sure that you can explain to me, but at least they are in the same family. What about dukkha? What about something bad that happens to you? Then what happens to the Brahmananda? So Swami Vidyaranya replies to it, and Swami Maheswaran just did a great job in explaining it. And he says, there also Brahmananda is present, winking at you. What do you mean by present and winking at you? What does it mean? How can it be? Because I am suffering. I broke down, I fell down and I broke a bone. And you're telling me that I am aware of the Brahmananda? He says, yes. How? He says, anytime you have some dukkha, you have the opportunity of thinking that you are a conscious person capable of objectifying the dukkha. You are the sakshi of the dukkha. The sakshi never goes away. And the dukkha one day will go. It's kind of like an external virus. One day it might attack you, but it will go. With the right medicine and so on. Hopefully you won't die from it. That's a separate issue. But leaving aside that, it's an attack on you and it leaves you. And then if you just think about that, that is in touch with the Brahmananda. You're not losing your mind, you're capable of keeping your sanity. You're saying, I am the very sakshi, I am the very witness of this. And a witness of some problems, a witness of something good. But if your identity is with the witness, not with the dukkha, that is how it is. You know, it's very similar to that example I had given a few weeks ago where I could not remember the name of Art of Living. And I was telling you this, that my father was very bothered by his loss of memory. And I'm very happy that I learned from him. And I've been studying Vedanta. He was not a student of Vedanta. That when I lose my memory, instead of focusing on the loss of memory, I am just enjoying the fact that I'm alive, I'm conscious, and I am the same consciousness that will never die. So why worry about the loss of memory? What has that got to do with it? Similarly, what is the big dukkha? It will come and go. It had to happen, it will go. But I cannot happen. I am not the nature of happening. I am. So that's the example that Swami Maheshananji had given about in the Panchadashi, in the chapter of the Panchadashi. Okay, in the next 10 minutes, let me just wrap this up, because I promise this is the last class. So as I said earlier, at least in Swami Maheshananji's view, which is his opinion, it could be that it may not be exactly this way, but it is close enough that one can accept it. There is a krama involved in the way of doing this. The krama is, as I said earlier, in the beginning through Chandrama and Manaha, there is an effect of Ananda Brahma Vritti. It is a Jnana Vritti. Possible. If it is possible, then stay with it. You don't have to go anything else. Then you're done. Your mind goes away, and your mind and the Ishvara's mind opens up to be the same entity, and you are free. That's good. If you're not able to do that, then you have to resort to some upasana. Upasana means developing a love, an appreciation. Love comes from appreciation. Love is always through appreciation. You have reasons for the love. Love doesn't happen without any reasons. And so the upasana means you have to develop the reasons for the love and let the love develop. Chaksho suryo ajayata. So this is the second stage. Suppose you are not able to develop this love and upasana. Then the third one is pranat vayurajayata, which is not the sequence given in this, but anyway Swami Maheshananji takes this. And so here, now you have to see the similarity between prana, which is the life-giving capability invented by Ishvara. This is what prana is. It's a creation. And prana means that it's a combination of a lot of different things. Of the lungs, prana apana, vyana, samana, udana, all of those, all working together to give you a living presence, which is not there in a stone. But if you have the ability to develop your infrastructure in a way that prana can make you alive, then you are a live person. This is what prana is. And the most important one of them is the vayu. Because really the oxygen in the air is the one that sustains you. And so that's the deliverer of prana to you. So the prana and vayu have the same relationship as chakshu and surya. So even in the Lagunyasa, for example, he says Agnir Vache, Vacho Hridaya is something like that. Agnir Vak. That's going to come up next. Then Pranaha and Vayu. All those pairings are done you have to see that in my body all these things are present. So this is what's called Nyasa. And so, pranat vayurajayata. So this is in fact another thing, remember when you talk about seeing the presence of Ishvara everywhere in the Ashtamurti. So here also, as you know, the prayer, Namaste Vayu, Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi, Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami, Ritam Vadishyami, Satyam Vadishyami. So, Namaste Vayu, Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi. If you want to recognize again the stupidity of not recognizing Ishvara, Surya is Ishvara. No, I'm just looking at the sun, but where is Ishvara? Oh, where is Ishvara not? Similarly in Vayu, Ishvara. Tvameva pratyaksham brahmasi. Hey Vayu. Means, hey Vayu, when you breathe in, you see the presence of Ishvara, the help of Ishvara to you, to keep you alive. So here, Swami Meshananji says that, again, just like there was a distinction between simple camera and an eye, here there is a difference between simple pranayama, where you just take in the prana and apana. This is simple pranayama. But this is like a camera. There is no bhavana in it. And it certainly brings you certain shanti, inner shanti, no doubt about it. But how much more value it would be if you bring Ishvara into the picture. Namaste Vayu, Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi. So the similar kind of bhavana. So anyway, in the krama, if you're not able to develop the love through Chakshu and Surya, then resort to Jnana Purvaka Pranayama. There's no love there, but as a launching pad for love, you do Jnana Purvakam. It should be simple. Who can deny that really I am being kept alive by some external force? If you have this kind of a feeling, oh, I'm an important person. Hey, you're not an important person, because if the oxygen were to be denied to you, you will die within a minute. There's a very unfortunate thing that happened a long time ago. There was a professor of computer science in Stanford, and he was in fact the professor for both the starters of Google. And his wife actually had taken some classes with me, and she invited me to their house one time. And so I gave a few classes, but it petered out. None of those people were really students. They were just curious about Vedanta and so on. So I met this gentleman. But one day in the party, apparently, he was slightly drunk, I believe. He had a bit too much to drink. And he fell into his own swimming pool and he died. So that example just came to me. He's a very well-known professor at Stanford. And I think that his wife now has so many shares of Google. He would have been very well received and so on. Very important person. But he was denied. He didn't know how to swim. and maybe he knew how to swim, but because he was inebriated, he could not do it. Within 2 minutes, he was gone. And his wife was inside and saying, "Hey, what happened? Where are you?" She couldn't find him. And then they found him lying at the bottom of the pool. So if the oxygen is denied to us for 2 minutes, gone, how important are we? We are totally dependent on Ishvara. Where else are you going to find the presence of Ishvara? Okay, then the final thing. If you cannot even do that, so the first one is the vidya through manaha, second one is upasana, the third one is karma through jnanapurvaka pranayama, then mukhat agnirajayata. And Swami Maheshanji makes a very beautiful long case for this. Then he says, from the mouth of Ishvara, Agni is born. What is Agni? Means the one that lights up the meaning of Vedas. That means books. Means chanting, Vedic chanting. Vedic chanting, not just any chanting. Because the rasa and the technical intonations of Vedic chanting create in you the mind which is capable of going to the next step. So the Vedic chanting is a very important thing. So in that case, there is a kind of a ladder system. So you have a Vedic chanting which prepares your mind. You can now do some pranayama. You can begin to do some upasana, and finally jnana. This is the way Swami Maheshanji pointed out as the krama for doing this. So with that, this class is over. Class is over, and this is the 41st class, and I think it goes without saying in my part that I learned a lot just by teaching it with some attention, with some depth, and I gain as much as, if not more than you do. So I appreciate your loyalty of coming to these classes for these 41 of weeks, and I would so based on this, here's what what I'm thinking of doing. So I'm preparing a step-by-step revision of Purusha Suktam, and so there will be several points that I want to quickly go through, and I've already started doing that. I'm about maybe 1/3, maybe 40% done, and I hope to finish that by another week or two. So my feeling is that it will take, as I've been signaling it to you, maybe 3 classes, I would imagine. This is my vision at this point. Maybe less, maybe more. Maybe about 3 classes of the revision of Purusha Suktam, in which I will actually write down these points, and maybe 100 points or so, because I've already done about 38, and so probably another 60 to go. And so I will send you a text for these. You keep that in front of you, and we are going to check mark each one of them. I won't spend a lot of time discussing them, and then we will just quickly go through a revision which will cover the entire gamut of Purusha Suktam. So this will be there from next week. So that's number 1. The second thing will be that because the main course is now over, I will not run the chanting of Purusha Suktam at 7:52. We will begin the class at 8 o'clock. So we will do that. Number 3, when the revision is over, I have one Guru Dakshina that I would like to ask from you. You can even give it to me starting now, but certainly hopefully by the end of this, the 3 more weeks of this, there's one Guru Dakshina I need from you. That Guru Dakshina is an email to me, just saying whatever you wish to say. That's all. So that's the one thing that I would ask you to do, if you can, please. If you don't want to do it, that's okay with me also. But if you can, that's the gift, that's the Guru Dakshina you will. So I have some record that you were there, you gained something, you felt something, you were disappointed in something, you were happy with something, couple of lines, whatever you want to say, but I'd like to get that back from you. Okay? Finally, at the end of the revision, this roster of the Purusha Suktam will be dissolved. And whatever next course happens to be, which I have not decided yet exactly what text you're going to give, we will begin a brand new recruitment for the roster for that class. So this is it. You don't automatically get enrolled in the new one. You have to request a new one. And if you think this is all that you needed to do, all the best to you, and hopefully we'll meet again sometime. So with that, I'll close the class with a prayer and see if you had any questions. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. You were happy with something. Vandana Agarwal, T. Srinivasan, Jairaj, Surendra Bhargava, the Banjaras, Darshana Bhutta, Chris Narayan, Arvind Taylor, Satish Jalota, Pannabhuva, Anupam Velpuri, Velpuris, Prakash Nair, Lakshmi Kaushik, Mary Penn, Chandradulam, Gauranga Krishnamurthy, Hanaso, Lichi, Meera, Zarina Kaji, Raj Velpuri, Shankar Narasimhan, Virendra Singh, Kalpana Dave, and Bharat Dave, Subroto Bose, Ila Joshi, Krishna Biru, Jugal, Bimla Kishore, Natalya, Sulochana, Balamani, Keshav Chopra, SK, not sure who SK is, Jaya Chaudhary. Okay, Balamani, we are blessed to learn very valuable information to the brain, mind, Atma from your gracious teaching. May God bless us all and be with you. Thank you. Kalpana, thank you Guruji. I had no idea what Purusha Suktam is all about. Your teachings helped me have a detailed understanding of it. Jai Raj, thank you. My heartfelt gratitude and namaskaram to you. Shruti Harve. Good. I don't see any questions. Raj Velpuri. Anupama is my wife. I was logged in briefly through her account. Okay, thanks Raj. Okay, so I think you will gain a lot by attending this revision, because it will bind together conceptually the entire teaching, and sometimes even bringing in the ending points at the very beginning, so that it's, in other words, it's not just a unfolding per se, but a combination of both beginning and ending together. Anyway, I'll explain that to me. It doesn't sound very easy to understand, but I think you'll enjoy it. That's all I'm saying. And so I'm spending quite a bit of time in making sure that the key concepts that we have covered are all recorded at one place. And I would say one thing, one kind of like a challenge for some of you. If you would like to, my points are going to be pretty sketchy. These are just kind of like outlines, because I don't want to spend a lot of time. I'm just 2 or 3 lines for each of the points. If you want to group together a bunch of yourself, 2 or 3 people, as many, and write it all out in a complete sentences with each points and so on, check with each other, please be my guest and do that. I think that would be useful. I will not have the time to do it on my own. And so if you want to have the challenge of taking the revision notes from me, so you're not ready yet until I'm finished with it, and then if you want to take that outline and put some flesh on it, so to speak, that might be useful as an antiquity for others. We can publish it as a small booklet even, which says the Purusha Suktam as Swami Maheshananji teaches it. Something like that we can do. And it will be a contribution for others as well. So if you can decide, you can raise your hands. When you write to me, you can tell me you're interested in doing it. And if, let's say, there's 2 or 3 of you, or even just one, then I will group you together so you can work with each other to come up with a joint project of that type. That's a possibility. Okay, wonderful. And good to have you, and I will see you next week. Om.